This is your host, Stephen Brent Sargeant, bringing you a private label podcast video. This is going to be on the silent side because I'm recording it late at night. My babies are sleeping, and if I wake them up, my wife will kill me and probably end the podcast. But I wanted to come on here. I just spent 3 wonderful nights at the Ritz Carleton Hotel in Toronto. It is like the epiphany of luxury. It was such an amazing, expensive experience, but it's something that definitely we want to do from a family standpoint, a staycation, and just being around that type of luxury and service and treatment was amazing. And I just figured I was going to try and do a video there, in the backdrop of this luxurious lobby of an expensive hotel. But I actually thought I'd bring it home and talk to everyone in my network about money. And this is a great subject. I love talking about this subject for a number of reasons, but more importantly, I love trying to get people's minds around it. So I'm going to talk to you all about what I've learned about money within the last couple of years, especially since I started being mentored and coached by my success coach, my performance coach, Hina Khan, who's really talked to me about money. These are some of the things I learned from her and from her mentor, Bob Proctor, who many of you know. So I want to dive down deep into this and really help people in 2022 around this, sometimes taboo subject. And on that, I'll give a disclaimer for those that are turned off about money or think that I talk too much or care or obsess about money. Those are all valid points or opinions, I guess. I think the most people that know me know my intent isn't about money or flashy cars, although I did get a new Beamer that I'd love to talk about. But that's not my intent. I'm not flaxing watches or Lambos. I really want to talk about how money can empower you. I no longer have a visceral reaction when people talk about money. I love talking about money openly. Actually, one of my close friends, Pollyanna Reed, just posted something on LinkedIn talking about how she approached speaking engagements and discussing the financials and compensation with other speakers that she's friends with, and how powerful that alignment was to be transparent about how much she was making and how much the other speakers were making, so they could be more strategic in how they approached the organizers, etc. And I think this is what we need. We need more conversations around money and success. And money doesn't directly correlate to success, but it is a great conversation starter. It is something that we should be openly talking about, not to brag, not to put other people down, but to help elevate the industry as a whole. So for those of you that can't stand to hear me talk about money, that's great. I remember the last time I posted about how much I made in a month, I got a couple of negative reactions, which I wasn't actually expecting because, I used to have negative reactions to people that talked about money because I used to feel that other people's success was coming out of my pocket, or they were taking the money that was meant for me. But now I've kind of completely wrapped my mind around money differently. So I'm not insecure about money. I'm not insecure about how much I make or how much I spend. I'm going to actually try and be as transparent as possible. For those of you that have followed me for a couple of years, you knew that my financial goal was to make $200,000 in 1 year. Now, I actually missed that goal this year, which was kind of hard to just, like, I came so close. I was at about 170, which is a huge improvement from the previous year and the year before that. But technically, on my NFT that I made, my VFriend, it would have put me up at the $200,000 mark. I would have achieved my goal, but I am not selling that NFT. Gary Vaynerchuk is my guy. I'm going to hold the NFT. I'm going to leave it for my kids. That one is not leaving the family. I don't care what goals it would have hit. So that's just to give you guys, complete transparency. Why I think it's great to be transparent about your earnings, because if I went on LinkedIn and said, hey guys, I went out on my own as an entrepreneur and I only made $1,500 this year, but I tried so hard, all of LinkedIn would be congratulating me and supporting me for my perseverance and, saying, keep my head up. But if I went on LinkedIn tomorrow and said, hey guys, I turned into an entrepreneur and my first gig was $150,000, I guarantee I would have got more of the reaction like I did get, where people are grotesque or upset that I think it's all about money and this field shouldn't be about money. It should be about fighting crime. I think we can do both. I think we can fight financial crime and make a lot of money doing it and help others. And the reality is the only way I can make this money is by providing value to others and to helping others in my network achieve success. So I'm excited to talk about money. And to be quite honest, I'm only been in this industry for 4 or 5 years. I don't have the 10, 20 years of experience many of the senior professionals making a lot more than me have. But I come from it with like fairly clean hands. I had no connections getting into this industry. 5 years ago, I had no idea even what AML was. So I'm showing you, I've documented my career for the last 5 years, showing you as I started my career and started talking about cryptocurrency and AML and compliance. I've been documenting this since day one. So you guys have seen, I'm not anything special. I'm not coming in here with a whole bunch of connections. I've had to work for where I've gone today. And for some people, they may not want to sacrifice what I've sacrificed, which is a lot of late nights, including tonight, to record this podcast for people tomorrow morning. They may not want to give up the fantasy footballs and the football leagues, that, and that's totally understandable. I'm not trying to put what I'm doing on anybody else, but if you are looking to aspire in your career and make some more money, you do have to make some kind of changes and do things in a certain way. So let's talk about some of the quick things that I learned. I'm going to try not to use my hands as much in this conversation. But one of the things I learned from Bob Proctor and I guess his mentor, Earl Nightingale, was there's 3 reasons or 3 things tied to your worth. The demand for what you do. So for me specifically, and for a lot of professionals in cryptocurrency compliance or blockchain investigations, there's not a ton of professionals out there with experience. So there's a ton of demand now for what we do, and there's not much of a supply. The ability to do what we do is the second thing. If you're able to kind of do blockchain investigations or been in the industry for a long time and have an understanding of typologies and suspicious indicators, you have the ability to do the job. And the last thing is the difficulty in replacing you. So, there's people that do a great job and they do just that. They fill their role or they take up that space, but they don't do anything more or they do something incrementally more and are hoping for a raise or promotion. A lot of times that just doesn't happen because their boss does not want to give them, they're doing a perfect job for where they are. You have to do that something extra. You have to do something outside of your employer. I always say the best way to get a raise is to add value to the industry. As long as you're adding value, there's really, really a huge difficulty in replacing you. And if we look back at some of the even traditional compliance things, like when the projects came out, I remember when the big projects came out, like the Promontory and the Protivity, and people were making a ton of money. And, my boss at the time, Peter Warwick, always warned me, he's like, those projects look good now, but what happens when those projects get cut? And then you have a ton of people that have similar experience now fighting for jobs that have to pay. But now there's twice as many industry professionals now looking for work. And that's exactly what happened to a lot of these projects. So you have to think, is it the difficulty in replacing you? Are you continuously growing and educating yourself and networking while you have a job? This is what happens. People get a job and then they stop doing all those things that got them to where they are. So I think there's a lot of value in that difficulty in replacing you. That is where I feel a lot of your monetary or compensation will go up. One thing that Hina Khan taught me that I definitely believe in is money is energy. So it flows, right? And I think what people don't realize, that it's a hard concept to understand, but if you think of money as like really energy, right? It comes, it's supposed to go through you. I like receiving a lot of money because I think I can actually add value to it and put it back out into the universe. And that sounds kind of woo-woo kind of stuff, but when you think about it, the times that you're making the most amount of money, you are focused. The times that you are adding the most amount of value, the most amount of money is probably coming to you. And a lot of the times you're reinvesting it in things like yourself. You weren't buying things per se, but you're reinvesting it into your growth, reinvesting investing into some of the projects you're working on. So you can see the flow of money is similar to the flow of energy. So this is huge. Like I've always had what was called a scarcity mindset. I used to think there was only a finite amount of money going around. And what Hina Khan introduced me to is this abundance mindset. There is unlimited money out there that you have access to if you're willing to think about it, if you're willing to kind of put yourself in scenarios and be more aware. They say that, the only reason you're making $100,000 is because you just haven't figured out a way to make $1 million a year. And that's so true. You have to get on that level of awareness. So what Hina taught me to do and what I've experienced this last week was pushing just a little bit up against my paradigm. I was always the person to look for the cheapest hotel room, because what's the point of, paying more when you can get something a lot cheaper? I was always looking at the cheapest hotel room, the cheapest night stay. And I've learned from a few vacations that it was probably better to spend a little bit more money to get a more enjoyable experience. And what Hina teaches us is, to keep on pushing our paradigm. When you look at hotels, look at a more expensive hotel, look at a bigger room. We looked at a suite, actually a corner suite, and we only have 2 kids. We could have just gone with a normal room, but the corner suite that had room and a hallway and a big area for the kids to play and run around, it was actually made a huge difference for the experience. And now that we've had that experience, our mind is kind of processed like this is the way we want to live. Our mind is going to find ways that we can make more money to experience more of these type of luxury staycations and really enjoy them. But had it not been for him, I would have never pushed, our family would have never pushed ourselves to do that. We probably would have stayed in the cheapest hotel in the cheapest area that had a pool. And there wouldn't have been anything wrong with that, but we wouldn't have been growing. We wouldn't have been experiencing a little bit more. So that's really one huge thing. One thing I've noticed in the industry, especially in crypto and compliance, is doing more. And I know a lot of people have probably heard this, doing more than what you're paid for. And eventually you'll get paid more for what you do for work. And I know that's a hard concept when you're thinking about traditional AML, right? You're looking at the person, everyone's getting paid pretty much same amount of money. So you don't want to do any more work. And the only time you're looking to do more work is that if you think there's a possibility for things like a promotion or for a permanent gig or some kind of bonus. And you go hard, and whether or not you get it or not, it determines how much effort you're going to put out. And I think that's just not the way to do it. I think you always should be putting in more work than you're actually getting paid for. It makes you more valuable. It makes you harder to replace. And even if your current employer doesn't see it, that value will resonate around the industry, and it makes you a flight risk, because especially right now and what we're going through right now, it's really hard to find dedicated professionals that are willing to do a little bit more than the 9 to 5 or standard job requirements. And employers are really looking for those great employees, and they're becoming harder and harder to find. And the gap is huge. Those employees compared to what we would think the second tier is, where everyone has similar experience, similar, background or AML experience. That gap is huge when it comes to things like communication and attitude and curiosity and willingness to want to engage in things like cryptocurrency, blockchain, Web3, etc., NFTs. So I always think whether or not you're getting paid for it immediately, it's always great to do more. I've based that on my career is how can I always do more? How can I read more? How can I learn more? How can I put myself in situations to meet more interesting professionals? How can I create content to help others that are trying to get to the level where I'm at? That's all created value that you really can't put a price on early on in your career, but I've seen it now pay off in things like speaking engagements or being a part of certification programs or being certified to become a trainer. Like these are all elements of my career that just by doing more, seeing more, collaborating more, that I've been able to experience and get paid on eventually. So that's something to think about. One really crazy thing, and it's funny because I was talking to my sister about this on New Year's Eve, is have you created room to receive? Like a lot of people say, oh, I'd love to win $1 million, but have you created space to receive it? Are you able to receive it? And a lot of people say, of course I'd be able to receive it. But you have to think, if someone's willing to give you, let's just say someone gives you something and now you feel oh man, I have to pay that person back, or oh no, I can't take that. That's how I always was. I was a good giver, but I hated to receive. Up until this day, I still struggle with receiving things. I've gotten better because of this program. It allows me to receive, which is awesome because it keeps the flow of money going, right? I give, I receive, I give more. But if I'm just giving and I'm not receiving anything, the flow of money stops with me. It doesn't keep that good energy, that good cycle going. And that can really, really hurt you long term if you're not willing to receive, because you think you'd be able to receive lottery winnings or big amounts of money. But if you can't even receive the small things, it's going to detract those other things. You're not going to attract bigger and better money if you can't receive the smaller things. So that's something to keep in mind, and creating space for it. I really, really wanted a nice car. Not even so much a nice car, but a nice car for me. I wanted a coupe, which is not practical because I have two kids and it's really almost impossible to get them in the back seat. But that's what I wanted. But I had to create space. I had to organize my garage in order to allow room for that car to get it. Like had I kept my garage the same way, it wouldn't have been impossible for me to kind of receive that car, especially going into the winter. So these are things that I knew I had to do. I had to create space. And even before I knew I was going to purchase that car, I created the space. I created the opportunity that when that car came, I could visualize working out in my garage and that car right there, and constantly reminding me of my goals and what I love and what I want to invest my money in. So that's something that you really need to think of is, are you able to receive some of those things? A lot of this stuff sounds very woo-woo. I know I used to think so too. But when you start breaking it down like Hina does, these are a lot of the things that when people say you're getting in your own way, these are a lot of the contributing factors that are literally stopping you from making more money. Another thing is self-image. Like, you're not going to out earn what you think your self-image is. So for many people, we have this paradigm that we can't make us more than a certain amount of money. Call it our thermostat, right? You always see people, they make the same amount of money. Some months are lower, some months are higher. By the end of the year, they make the same amount of money. You need to raise that thermostat. You need to look at yourself and think, and this is what I think personally, that I can go into any department, into any organization, I can benefit that organization and get paid top dollar. That's what I believe. That's how much value I think I bring. But if you don't have that self-image, if you don't have that self-confidence about yourself, other people aren't going to have that self-confidence. And where I see this the most is as a hiring manager and a recruiter. When you ask people, or when discussions about money come up, you can always tell the people that are confident in what they value, that they believe that they bring, and the compensation that they should receive, and the people that are like tripping over their words because they don't know how much they should think that they should offer or how much they should ask for. And I think that really paralyzes people. I have a great number in mind what I believe I'm worth, and it's probably in the range of 250, because that is the amount of value I believe I bring to any organization, because I'm not just doing crypto compliance work. I'm doing branding, I'm doing negotiations and business development and networking. These are all the elements not every average crypto compliance professional brings to the table, which is fine. But that also allows me to seek bigger compensation, to seek more value from an organization than the average person. So what you have to start thinking about is, do you have a great number in mind? Is your self-image at that number? That is how much I feel I'm worth. And a lot of people will be like, Stephen, we're going through a tight time with COVID. You couldn't do this and you can't get this. And, my boss says we can't get raises. And that kind of brings me on to my next point, is that money flows through your employer, right? Like, not from your employer. If your specific employer is not giving you a raise, there's opportunities for you to make money through multiple other ways. When you're adding value, trust me, there's employers lining up to want to pay you money. There's several people in my network that got job opportunities monthly, including myself, with opportunities that are amazing, that might, exchange maybe compensation for convenience. But like, when you add a high self-image, you know exactly what you're worth. You know what you're willing to give into. You know what you're willing to prioritize, not just compensation, maybe things like flexibility or working from home. You have to be confident in these things, and that comes from your self-image. You are going into interviews almost begging and feeling desperate for a job, whereas I'm going into interviews interviewing people. Of course, I want to work with the organization. Why would I be at an interview if I didn't? But I'm not going, and I'm pitching them on what I believe I can bring to the table, but I'm also inquiring about what their culture is like, because I'm not just going to go to any organization where I don't feel that they have the same values I do, where I don't think they have, their energy may not meet my energy, and I don't think it would be a good match. You have to go into these interviews at the self-image is that they want me. You as the candidate, they want me. I'm bringing something to the table. I'm interviewing them. This is a joint conversation now. They're not interviewing me. We're having a discussion about the role that they may have and how I see I could fill it. But this is a joint conversation. This is not a one-way conversation where they're just telling me about the role and they're peppering me with questions and I'm nervous about those questions. Of course not. I'm interviewing them. I've done my research. I've done my preparation. So that's another thing. There's so many different opportunities to get paid. So I'll let you guys in on a little secret. Not even a secret. I think this is one of the most strangest things that people might think. I remember when I was still working for Bitfinex. When I was consulting for Bitfinex, I went to Peter Wark, who's the CCO at Bitfinex, my personal friend, and I said, "Listen, there's this other opportunity that's come up. I want you to take a look at this opportunity and let me know what you think." And it would be strange, it would be ludicrous for anyone to go to their boss and say, "Hey, I have this opportunity. What do you think?" But I came to him and I wasn't trying to leverage this opportunity in order to get a raise or in order to get some kind of leverage. I was going to him like open arms, like, "Here, this is what I'm transparently getting. What are your thoughts about this opportunity? And how do you think this fits into my long-term progress at Bitfinex?" And he was very candid, and it wasn't like he was going to say anything to make me stay. I think he felt the energy that I was coming to him real, and he came to me real, and he's like, "Well, let's look at other ways that maybe you can make some more income. If it's a money situation, let's look at other ways that you can make income." So he looked at things like, can you do more training? Can you get more speaking engagements? Can I put you in more opportunities for you to leverage in order to make more money in other ways and still benefit the community? I think it's impossible for a lot of people to believe I would do this. But I also think when you're transparent and when you have good intentions and when you're not trying to leverage situations, you can get candid responses from people and they can take a look at it. And they might be somewhat biased. Do they really want to replace me and have to go through an interview process? Probably not. But I still think he gave me advice as he would give anyone, whether or not they worked with their organizations. And I think these are the type of conversations that we should be having with our employers if we see these other opportunities come. Like, "Hey, this is the opportunity. This is what," and he asked me something like, "What excites you about this opportunity? Is it the title? Is it the money? Like, what's your motivating factor for even considering this opportunity? And how can I help you achieve those things while staying consulting for Bitfinex without leaving the organization?" Now, this is huge. And this is what true leadership is. When you're able to go to the root of what is making you even have this conversation and find ways to identify what is wrong or what is working or what motivates you and how you can kind of help that person with those motivations while still working. That is, like, to me, that's what builds loyalty within a team. Some other bosses would be like, "Okay, go," and then they would treat me differently because I was looking at all these opportunities. But I don't think if you come with clean hands and you come very straight, I don't think you're gonna have these type of conversations. This is, I think, what differentiates me. I'm gonna be blatantly honest with my communications with organizations, and that might turn people off, or that might be like, "Hey, he's coming to us real. Let's have a serious conversation." So these are things you can think about. It's pretty risky if you don't really trust the other person to provide you an unbiased response. But it actually made me respect Peter even more and made me want to work within his organization and work with him and learn from him, especially from his leadership style and his leadership skills even more. So that's a story that I don't think I've ever told anyone other than my wife. But it's an interesting one. I think it'll be very helpful for people. Even if you don't ever try this, it's just something to think about, how to create leadership and how to create trust with your senior professionals or people that you report to directly. Honestly, I'm going to go back to this. I always think hiring a coach is probably the best way to make money, to be quite honest. I know it sounds silly. My coach is, to most people, what they would think of as expensive, 10,000 USD for a 6-month program. But I would think that everyone that's taken this program has gotten at least their $10,000 back, but they've started to think differently and act differently, and it's benefited not just them. Imagine you pay $10,000. Let's just say it was even for a year, and in that year you made $12,000. You've already gotten your money's worth. But now you've reached a level where you're at $12,000. So next year you make 12,000. So you continuously get your money's worth. It would be silly not to invest in it. If I said, here, give me $1,000, and in 6 months I'll give you $1,200, no strings attached, you'd probably take it to make the extra 200. But people are scared to invest in coaching, because they don't know if it's going to work, right? They can't bring themselves to removing themselves from, I can't spend that type of money. That's a huge investment. It is, but that investment is solely betting on yourself. If you do the work, if you make that committed decision, you will get the money back. But more importantly, everyone leaves the program being like, oh man, you've helped me with my relationship with my family members, with my kids, my trauma I've been dealing with decades. I spoke to a person that was almost a former Olympian, and we did a podcast. I'm going to release it actually. And she talked about how the judgment has been killing her growth for decades, because of what had happened, that made her, or that contributed to her not making it to the Olympics. So you have to think, a lot of this shit we're dealing with, let's be honest, guys, it's deep seated, whether it's our mother or situations that have happened when we're younger, or even situations that have happened in our job, our work. It's deep, and we need to start doing some deep work around it. The hardest part about finding a good mentor is, like, you're spending a lot of money on maybe people that aren't fitting, or maybe those Instagram coaches that really don't give you anything that you don't already know, and they scam you out of 3,000 or 4,000 or even more than what my coach is. What I love about my coach is my wife did the program, I've done the program, my best friends have done the program, my sister's now doing the program, and everything is instant. Like, you see the changes instantly because you've made that committed effort into yourself. I never like to push people on this, but I think if you're going to make, if anything has taught us in the last 2 years, is nothing's going to be guaranteed, whether that's your job, whether it's your health, whether it's being able to leave even your house, nothing is going to be guaranteed. Now is the best time to invest in yourself. And how many people that you know in the compliance or AML, like, look around of your network, how many people are paying for professional coaching? Not many, but then not as many people are making as much money as me either. And I think it's because, like, not many people are taking that leap, that leap of faith and investing in themselves. I invest a ton of money, whether it's my health, whether it's my mindset. It's so important. And to just do a little bit something different than everyone else is doing. Trust me, there is definitely wealth that you can't see right now. You don't see it because you're like, oh, well, I can only make this amount of money. And my employer said no raises during COVID. But just even joining the program, I was able to collaborate with other business owners. I wasn't an entrepreneur. I was able to collaborate with other business owners, and that contributed to the extra $40,000 that I made last year. And it was great because not only was it a money thing, I learned a lot about growing a business, about what I wanted. And a lot of it was, maybe I don't want to help people work on their businesses. Maybe I want to make my own business or create my own business and do more of that. And that's what you're seeing right now in the content, is just me doing more of what I want to do. And that all came from a conversation that I had with my performance coach, on Thanksgiving of last year, where she just simply asked me, what do you want? So these are the things that I think most professionals, they're never going to think to spend this amount of money, but the return on the investment is huge. So before you start thinking about expensive vacations, before you start thinking about what NFT you're going to purchase or how much you're going to spend on another compliance or AML related course like ACAMS or ACFCS, trust me, take some time, think about whether a coach could benefit you, which I think it can, and start separating yourself from everyone else in the industry. Because going back to those points I taught you, the difficulty in replacing you is where a lot of that compensation that you're not earning right now will lie. So once again, go through a coach. Start thinking differently. Like, what if you can make your monthly income or your annual income your monthly income? These are all things that you should start thinking about. And these are the ways that, when you start thinking about it, start money ideas come out of nowhere. Not even so much the money, the ideas, your level of awareness. You start hearing conversations about money. Like me investing into NFTs was just because my level of awareness was there. And that made me money. Like at one point, my investment of 3,500 was worth $60,000. And I'm talking about a matter of months. And if you talk about anyone that bought NFTs this year, they've all had similar stories, but it wasn't because, I'm into NFT. It was just my level of awareness, knew about where I should be making investments. And the reality is I don't have a scarcity mindset. There's an abundance mindset. So I know any money I put out there is going to come back to me, and it's going to come back to me in more than I'm putting out, because I'm keeping the flow of energy, the flow of money. So these are things to think about. And you have to be able to walk away from money as well and hold yourself to a higher standard. There's been plenty of times I've walked away from money, and that's really hard to do, especially when it comes to like speaking engagements, where I feel that, in compliance, there's not a lot of money in speaking engagements. So there was a couple of opportunities I did have that I decided to walk away from, because I wasn't ready to work with the organization due to a lot what was going on with the anti-Black racism and what I felt wasn't happening by those organizational participants. So I felt at the time it wasn't right for me to be speaking. I don't want to speak with your organization until I feel that you're doing stuff to help me and my community. And they were okay with that. They pushed the envelope. They really wanted to work hard, and they let me in on conversations and initiatives that they were doing. But you have to be able to walk away from the money sometimes to prove your point. And that's kind of hard to do when, you think that's counterproductive to you trying to hit your financial goals. But sometimes holding yourself to a higher standard makes people think like, oh, okay, his self-image is he doesn't need to accept this money, so we need to approach him differently, because he's not going to accept just any money thrown at him for any cause or any reason. He is working in his paradigm which is making a lot of money, but that doesn't necessarily mean he accepts everything. One last thing is stop looking at industry peers at your level as your standard. I remember when I was working at the bank, it was just like everyone was looking at the people around them and how much they made, and like, could they make a couple $1,000s more, and if they left to go to another bank they can make $5,000 more. And this is great. Like, incremental growth is great, and if you feel comfortable jumping from one bank to another, that might be fine. But I think there's really some power in looking at who are the industry's best right now. What can I learn from them? What are they doing? Not even so much about what they're saying. What I've noticed is not that many people in this industry talk about money. So I love to start having more conversations with senior professionals in this industry about what they're making, how they got to that, how did they deal with negotiations, how have they been able to make supplemental income. It's hard to receive that mentorship unless you have close personal relationships. I do with a lot of people. I would never share their financial stories, but I would encourage more people to talk about money. Just 3 years ago, I was making like $25 an hour. I'm not scared to talk about money, whether I'm making a lot of it or whether I'm barely making any of it. So I think we need to have more conversations so we can see where everyone's at and learn from each other. I'm hoping that these conversations start more conversations about money. This is just me explaining in a long podcast what I think about money. I'm hoping it will trigger something in someone's mind. You don't have to listen to me or follow. I'm not giving you the 10 steps to become a millionaire or anything. I'm just giving you, these are some of the things that have helped me, and they might be beneficial for you. They might be able to springboard something to give you some level of awareness. It might even make you want to invest in yourself or start speaking more openly about money, because I think we've like kind of wrapped this taboo scenario around talking about money. And I, I agree. I've had a lot of conversations with people that are like, oh, you shouldn't tell people what you make, and it's this and that. And I think if you're around a community of people that are supportive, of people that have an abundance mindset, they're not going to be insecure whether I say I make $40,000 a year or $340,000 a year, which will be my new goal for 2022. But they're not going to be insecure about that. They're going to encourage you. They're going to figure out ways they can help you earn that. They're going to figure out what you're doing to get to that level. You can collaborate and work together. That's what we should be doing. We should all be making lots of money so that we can do the things we want in life. I know that money does not buy happiness, but when we see some of the things that we're struggling with, like staying in the job when we don't really want to be there, or when it comes time for camp to come up and you're looking at, you don't want to spend the money to send your kids to camp. These are all scenarios that are affecting your life that have to do with money. So to say that money isn't important, I think is naive. It is truly important. Whether or not it'll buy you happiness is completely irrelevant. It's just going to magnify more of what you are. If you were if you're an asshole before you had money, you're probably going to be an asshole with money. Let's face it. If you have good intent when before you had money, you're probably going to have great intent when you have money. It just amplifies more of the person you are. It has nothing to do with happiness. But I'd rather more people make more money in this industry and see how it makes them feel. I think just the notion of collaborating and giving each other ideas and how we can make more money, trying to give each other opportunities, not just trying to save all these opportunities for ourselves so that we can get all the speaking engagements, which is really what's happening right now. There's a few people that are making a ton of money doing a lot of things that I'm talking about, doing a lot of things that I'm doing right now, but they're keeping it to themselves because they don't want to let other people in. I want everyone to come into this. I want everyone to be gaining speaking opportunities. I want everyone to create their personal brand. I want everyone to get into crypto and compliance and take advantage of the supply and demand issues and to make a ton of money right now because crypto's hot and the experienced professionals are just not there. I want everyone to work together to make a ton of money, to be happy spiritually, financially, emotionally, and any way we can. Let's be rich, period, rich. Honestly, this is a really good book. It's called The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles. Again, another suggestion through my program with Hina Khan. This is a great book, short read, really great read. It talks about doing things in a certain way because we see people in our industry doing the exact same thing, but one person's making a ton of money and one person's not making that much money or barely making it. So it's all about doing things in a certain way. I strongly suggest that book. Oh, I kind of like these like late night things. I can just be real with you guys. If you're listening to this podcast, I know it's not that upbeat, hardcore podcast that you're used to. I'm hoping this is a really transparent dive into what I've been doing up until this point. And I know this will help you if you take some of these stuff into practice. Reach out to me. I'm always available to talk about this subject. I will always make time to respond to you if you have any questions or if you have ways that you think you can make more money and I can be of support to you. All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening to this. You know what to do. Review, bump that. I love all your comments about my content. It means the world to me. I can't, going full-time out of my spare time into the content is what I do best. I love it so much. And every time I get a message about how good my content is or how helpful it is, or even, maybe how controversial it is, depending on who you ask, I still appreciate it because I'm here to engage the industry. I'm here to start more discussions and I'm here to help more people. We'll talk soon.